Hello, thank you for joining me. I'm excited to share with you some of my experience of the way that the various practices of wisdom and money weave themselves together in a genuinely transformative process that transforms our relationship with money and, in particular, our way of moving money in the world for good. The mission of Wisdom and Money is to invite people of wealth and people from a culture of wealth to engage with money as a doorway to spiritual transformation at the personal, communal, and systemic levels. And I'm going to be working with these three levels to demonstrate how, in my experience, these levels work together in the various practices that are used. And this comes out of my experience of over 20 years in the Boston circle of wisdom and money. And you'll notice that I have very cleverly color-coded the three levels. I'll use blue for the personal level, green for the communal level, and red for the systemic levels. And not only am I using a color code, but I'm going to use graphic representation. So here, this graphic, for me, it expresses the way in which these personal transformation is experienced at these three levels and how they work together. The blue, you remember, is the personal level. And for me, at the personal level, there's an inward kind of work of transformation. And so you see the arrow pointing inward in the blue circle. And in the communal or relational level of practice, you see the arrow is completing a circle, how we are in relationship with one another at the communal level. And finally, the systemic level in red, the arrow points outward, and this to me speaks of how we act in the world, moving money into the world in the flow of spirit. And for me, you'll see that these circles overlap. They each support one another. And the whole experience of transformation would be incomplete and ineffective, I believe, if we weren't working at all three levels together. There'd be no use changing the systemic structures of our society if we were not changed within ourselves or changed in our relationships with one another. And similarly, I can go through a process of personal transformation or have wonderful relationships with others, but I need to pay attention to what I am called to do, what is mine to do in the world. I need to bring my experience of transformation into action in the particular way that I am called to do so in the world. And so I'll be using these symbols to symbolize these levels of transformation and how they are reflected in the various practices of wisdom and money. So there's the personal level pointed inward. Here's the communal level, completing the circle. The systemic level, pointing outward, action into the world. So the wisdom and money practices fall under three headings. There are money practices, wisdom practices, and the practices of the Be Present empowerment model. And these came into the work of wisdom and money sequentially in this order historically, and they revealed themselves to be practices that very helpfully and very effectively weave themselves together. I'll look at the money practices first, and three practices in particular. The money practices in wisdom and money aren't limited to this, but I want to use these three. First, we share our money stories in a personal way. We speak transparently about money. Together in our circles, retreat circles, we engage in this conversation and we listen to one another and we speak transparently about money in particular, even bringing getting naked with our numbers, as that practice is called. And finally, all of this is in service of moving money in the world in the flow of spirit. So the first of these practices, sharing our money stories. In my experience, all of us in the Boston Circle certainly, came into this work with a certain amount of emotional baggage. We had experiences growing up in the setting in which we were born, in the values of our families, in the relationships, and the way that money played into the relationships within our family, and so on. And all of this history, this personal history, affected our feelings about money and our relationship with money. So part of the initial work of healing and liberation around money came with sharing our personal stories. And as we shared these stories out loud, or in my experience, I got to see that there's a little distance, a little between the story that I tell myself, about my relationship with money. There's distance between that and who I truly am and what my relationship with money truly could be. I begin to separate myself from my story about myself. And then within the confidentiality and the deep trust of the circle, knowing that we all are coming from wealth or systems of wealth, societies of wealth, settings of wealth, cultures of wealth. Within that trust, we speak transparently, not only about our personal histories and our relationship with money, but about the numbers of the money itself. And this is a way of breaking through the silence around money, the shame, guilt around money, so that we can just see money for what it is. And also, for those of us who have some sense of being alienated from our money, or afraid, or feel inadequate to deal with our money, this is a way of beginning to put our arms around the money that is in our care, and put our arms around it and begin to dance with it. So this can be very challenging, but again, also very healing and very liberating. And finally, all of this is in service of our coming to know what is ours to do with our money, in bringing it into flow in the world. And so in the Boston Circle, we have encouraged one another to experiment, to be playful about the money, and try things out, and then come back and reflect on it. And together we discern, what does that feel like to move money in this way as opposed to this way? And I have found that sometimes I'll give money and afterwards I'll feel kind of flat about it. Other times I'll give money, contribute, participate in something, and I feel excited. It's a life-giving experience. I feel that I have received something by means of giving. Or as we say, the blessing has flowed in all directions. That's for us a sign that here's where the Spirit is leading us. Here's where there is a sign of what is mine to do in the world. And we come to this by listening to one another. It's very much a discernment that happens in the community of our circles. So those are our money practices. And now to look at the wisdom practices that came into our life. These wisdom practices having their origin in the very ancient monastic communities of the Christian tradition, rooted ultimately in communities in the deserts of Egypt and Syria. And the three practices in particular that we focus on are centering prayer, working at the personal level, sacred chant at the communal level, and in my interpretation, Lectio Divina, contributing to the systemic level of transformation. And to say just a word about that, all of these practices, of course, are introduced in greater detail in other videos, so I'm just touching on the surface of these. But centering prayer, we understand as a practice of letting go of thoughts. And as I let go of thoughts, again, I'm letting go of that story that I tell myself about myself. And as I let go of thoughts, I let go of the personality the homemade personality that I'm clinging to. And it may feel that if I let go of thoughts, I'm just going to fall into an abyss. I'm taught to think in this culture that I think, therefore I am. If I let go of my thoughts, am I letting go of my being? Well, no. I discovered that by letting go of thoughts, I come into a deeper sense of my being, particularly by my sense of myself and the opening of my heart and my connection to the divine at the deepest level, and at that level coming to find the ever-present origin of my being, my personal being. And then sacred chant, I love sacred chant. I have learned from monastic communities to chant the Psalms. I'll do this in my prayer even if I'm alone. Chanting is a way of praying that involves the body, the breath, the intonation. It's also a way of making prayer beautiful. And I think we're all called, like all creatures, to bring our voices into the world in a beautiful way. That's not nothing. But it has a whole other dimension of power when we chant together in circles by bringing our voices into unison or experimenting with harmonies. Something greater than the sum of its parts is created and is experienced. For me, I express this as an experience of communion, where we come together as one, but remain, each of us, bringing our unique voice into the mix. And for me, this is a way of experiencing in my body what it means to be, in the language of the New Testament, a member of a larger body, to perceive myself as just one part of a larger whole. And for me, that's a crucial understanding as I seek to know what is my part to do with my money in the world in service of the greater body of humanity. And then Lectio Divina, it's, of course, this practice of sacred reading. And my sense of this is that in Lectio Divina, of course, we're listening inwardly for a word or a phrase that stirs something in us. For me, this is an attuning to something stirring within me. And as I meditate on that, pray with that in the practice of Lectio Divina, I'm opening up a sensitivity to what might be some inner source of guidance. In Lectio Divina, I'm not looking for the meaning of a passage of a poem or scripture. I'm listening for what is it that this is saying to me in this moment. And that way I become, through practice, more attuned to sensing some subtle inner direction in the course of my life. Some still small voice speaking within me that might give me crucial guidance to know, again, what is mine to do in the world, in particular with my money. So these are the wisdom practices. And finally, we brought into the practice of our circles and of our organization at every level the Be Present Empowerment Model and its 3 realms of practice. And when I first encountered the empowerment model and these 3 realms of practice, I was struck by how coherent they were with what I had come to experience in the wisdom practices. First of all, in the first realm of practice, for me to know myself outside of the distress of oppression, it was very coherent with my understanding of finding my true self, apart from my experience, apart from the effect of culture, apart from all the history and the ways that had distorted my sense of myself, distorted, reduced my being. In meditation, in centering prayer, I was coming into contact with that true self in a kind of passive way in silence. But in this realm, the first realm of the Be Present Empowerment model, I was maintaining that sense of connection as I spoke, as I shared in a circle. I had practice in speaking from my true self, maintaining that active contact and bringing the voice of that true self into the world. And the indicators of the first realm help me to really kind of groove that connection and actively bring my true self out into the world as I shared and circled. And in our listening to one another in a circle, listening in a conscious and present state. Again, the indicators in the second realm help me as a listener to stay attuned to the speaker, to follow the speaker, and by open-ended questions to help the speaker find their own inner guidance to come to know their true self and come and bring that into the world and speak from that. And I really believe, this is very powerful practice. And it helps us to create relationships of partnership that can withstand whatever comes up. When we learn to listen to one another, really, I believe we all have a deep need, I do, to be truly seen for who I am, to be listened to be heard for who I truly am. I believe that we listen one another into being, and in our listening, we allow one another to find the strength, the courage, the guidance that we need for acting in the world. And finally, the third realm, as we act in the world, to do that with effective relationships and in true alliances. There's nothing more common in the conventional world of philanthropy to move money in the world in a way that is not within an effective relationship, that is not within a true alliance. Edgar Villanueva has pointed out that conventional foundation grant-based philosophy of philanthropy encourages grantees to work with transparency and collaboration and accountability, while the foundations themselves are not transparent. They do not collaborate. They are not accountable to anyone outside themselves. As those of us in the Boston Circle who found our work to do in the world with our money, as we've been guided by Spirit, we have so often been guided to work across historic divisions in society and to come into partnership with those different from ourselves or from different backgrounds. And inevitably, in these beautiful alliances where we share common values and a common vision, even with that common vision, things come up in the course of the work. Of course they do. And too often we don't know how to talk through those while maintaining our relationship. And things go silent, things break down, things go dead. This third realm of the Be Present Empowerment model is really a touchstone for me in how I am to go about doing my work in the world in a way that is in the flow of Spirit at every level, in my origin, in the way that I carry that out, as well as in the effect I'm trying to bring into the world. So these are the ways, in my experience, I have found that the practices weave themselves together. I'm excited for you to discover the ways that these practices will work in your life.